black and gold fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, where I examine, discuss, honor, and celebrate all things college football across the entire college football landscape, but with a very special emphasis on our beloved black and gold squads of the Missouri Tigers and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Welcome back. I'm your host, Blair Parks. Holla at you, boy. It's great to be back with you. This is my Week 5 preview and picks episode. That's right. It's already Week 5. I can't... It's really depressing and sad to think that we're almost already at the halfway point. We wait 8-9 months for this, right? And here we are. It just flies by like sands through the hourglass. So are the days of our college football lives. That's just what it is. But anyway, let's enjoy it. Week 4 was action-packed, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of the same here in the upcoming Week 5. Last week, if you joined me, I told you that weeks 4 through 7 are really going to act as our 4-course meal. Last week, we started with the appetizer, and we saw chaos reign. Now, week 5, it is time for the soup or salad. And why this is important. Weeks 4 through 7, after what happens with the results and action on the gridiron, it is going to provide us with some clarity and separation among all the conferences as far as who are the pretenders and who are the true contenders for college football glory in the college football playoff or at the New Year's 6 Selection Committee Bowls. So things just roll on, and I expect a lot of action and dynamite games here in upcoming Week 5. Both of our beloved black and gold squads are in action this week. They both are at home, Iowa inside of Kinnick and Missouri inside of Faroe, but they both face very daunting tasks. Both of them host top 4 AP teams this week. In the big noon kickoff game, which kicks off at 11 o'clock on Fox, Iowa hosts number 4 Michigan, and under the lights at 6:30, I believe, on the SEC network, Missouri hosts number 1, that's right, number 1, Georgia comes to town. So looking for huge upsets, and stand by later in the episode, you'll get a little bit more insight on what I think about these two games and my official picks and predictions for the games involving our beloved black and gold squads. Now, if you're here, this is not just for fans of the black and gold, but for all college football fans. You are all welcome here. This is a safe haven. And at this time, I want to just go ahead and give you much love and thanks and show my gratitude. Thank you for everything you've done for the channel. Without you, none of this would be possible. So please, if you like what you see and what you hear, subscribe, click the subscribe button, like, share, rate, comment. I always encourage and welcome any feedback from you, the black and gold family, and college football fans alike. And if you are friends with any college football fanatics, friends, family who enjoy the game, fans of the black and golds or not, that's totally fine. Let them know. Spread the good word to tune in to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. Let's keep this momentum going and let's continue to grow. So thank you for everything you do. It's an absolute pleasure week by week that you're with me and allowing me to share and express with you my love and passion for all things college football. And if you're new to the show, if I make the occasional gaffe, my apologies, no disrespect. But what I do, I just click, record, download, and send and upload. I don't do any edits. I don't do any dress rehearsals. I don't do any practice because this is just a hobby. If I had to do that kind of work, well, that would be a job, and I've already got a legit day job. I've got 2 children, so I've got a lot on my plate. So occasionally, if I have the little dead air or gaffe, my apologies. I continue to do better each week. Just let me know what you think. Like, share, comment, subscribe. All right, so this is what's on the docket for today. My lineup, I've got 4 segments for you on my Week 5 preview and picks. As normal, I will give you my updated Heisman Trophy standings, and those who right now going into Week 5, I believe, are on the Heisman Trophy shortlist. A little bit of a spoiler alert, it's going to be very, very quarterback heavy this week. Then after that, I'm going to have one of my favorite news segments, my Sound Off segment, which you definitely want to stay tuned for that, especially if you happen to be a fan or enemy, proponent of the Nebraska football program and of one quarterback named Adrian Martinez. After that, we will go then into my favorite segment. It goes first will be my trap games for upcoming Week 5. I'm going to put a few teams on trap alert. They are heading into the Week 5 matchups in potentially letdown games or look-ahead games. And then after that, kind of concurrently, we'll do my previews and my picks for some of the big games that are on the radar and some that are off the radar for Week 5. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get it. So let's move into my first segment of today's episode is my Heisman Trophy update and standings. Now from last week, going into Week 4, it was pretty much status quo. But I do have a new addition this week. I have dropped one person from my Heisman shortlist, but I now have added a new name, making his initial debut here on my Heisman Trophy list. But based on the game this weekend, it might be really short-lived. So let's go ahead and get into it. I have a total of 5 Heisman candidates who are on the short list. First, who has been there from Week 1, Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. Big-time game, and guys showed up and showed out at home in Knoxville over the weekend against rival Florida. The Volunteers took home the W. Now, making his initial debut here on my Heisman Trophy list, I've got to add him, because when you look at individual quarterback stats, this cat is within the top 10 of basically every subject and topic, and he's within the top 5 and top 3 in most. Well, who I'm talking about is down there at Mississippi State in Starkville, quarterback Roy Rogers. I think he has definitely got to be given a little bit more Heisman love and attention, especially the next 2 weeks. They've got 2 huge games back-to-back at home. This week they've got Texas A&M, and I believe next week they've got Arkansas. So if he continues to put up the numbers he is absolutely going to start getting some more Heisman love, because right now, when you look within the SEC, he is the best quarterback per stats, without a doubt. Now, next, I'm keeping him on the list for now. He is continuing to build a little bit more momentum. A guy who's been on my list from Week 1, actually in the postseason, Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud. Next, a guy that I added, I believe, 2 weeks ago because I just had some doubts about their defense, but they were able to gut out a huge win during Week 4 over the weekend in Corvallis. Even though he had a little bit of a down game, the defense pitched in with 4 interceptions. They escaped with a very narrow victory over Oregon State. But when they needed him, he drove the field, got the eventual winning touchdown. I'm talking about USC quarterback Caleb Williams. And the last guy on my list who's been there, actually I added after the Week 2 performance down in Texas, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner from last year. I've got Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. So that's my list of the 5 Heisman Trophy finalists. At this point, these cats are all in the running to be in NYC for a chance to take home the Heisman hardware and do the pose at the end of the year. Let me know what you think. Comment, do you agree, disagree with the list? Is there somebody I should add, someone I should subtract? Just go and let me know. I love to hear back from you. And once again, please like, share, rate, subscribe. I'm going to keep saying it. Now my next segment is a new segment to this year's season on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. Now, that being said, this is only my second year doing this, is my Sound Off segment. And if you haven't ever been a part of this one, I think you're going to like. It's really something very similar to all of you Family Guy fans out there. When Peter Griffin had his Grind My Gears episode on the news. Sound Off is where I will call out a certain subject. Now, that could be a player, a position group, a coach, coaches, fans of a certain team, a program, a play, a trend. And it may not always be negative. It could be either negative or positive, and a little bit of both. It may be a little bit of good, bad, and ugly. But this week, it's kind of a unique one. I'm going to set the tone here, and then when I give you the story, I give myself 3 minutes on the clock to express what it is. This week's Sound Off, I've got to have 2 separate subjects, but they are completely intertwined. I'm talking about what I mentioned in the opening of the episode, quarterback Adrian Martinez, and the Nebraska football program there in Lincoln. And while we all know it's tough times right now for Big Red. So without further ado, let me go ahead and make a little note here of the time. And starting now. So Adrian Martinez, currently he is the quarterback at Kansas State who transferred from Nebraska. He was a 4-year starter under former coach Scott Frost at Nebraska. And just to set the record straight, he was Scott Frost's first premier recruit. They were going to turn the program around. He was the golden boy, Mr. Champion, national championship quarterback coming home, Nebraska's native son, the prodigal son coming home. Obviously, that didn't work out. During Adrian Martinez's time as the starting quarterback in Lincoln for the Cornhuskers, they were 5-20. That's right, 5-20 in one-score games in Nebraska while under Coach Scott Frost. And why that's important is on message boards, on social media, newscasters, fans, they really would always want to dump a lot on Adrian Martinez. They never wanted to put the responsibility first and foremost on Scott Frost for lack of coaching. Obviously, there was a lot of that. But through the years, there were a lot of Scott Frost protectors, right? The shields that said, oh, it's not all him. Let's give him more time. They would always say, a lot of people, that without Adrian Martinez making untimely turnovers, poor mistakes, when the pressure's on, he folds and crumbles like a pie crust. But Adrian Martinez absolutely proved all of them wrong. During week 4 last weekend, he took K-State down to Norman, Oklahoma, knocked off previously ranked number 6 Oklahoma at home, and the stat lines speak for themselves. He threw for 234 yards passing with 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, but ran for 148 yards on 21 attempts for 4 touchdowns. So giving Adrian Martinez 5 total touchdowns with 0 interceptions. Huge win for K-State. Now they find themselves ranked within the top 25. And that is really the signature win that he's been looking for, Adrian Martinez, and really what he desperately needed. I love this. His revelation and redemption season continues. I'm so happy for him. He deserves it after all of the bad pub he got at Nebraska. And Nebraska fans, at this point, I don't know if there are any more pro Scott Frost people within Husker Nation. I'd love to hear from you if they are, or those who could say, oh, he didn't deserve to be fired. But this has to be very full circle and rewarding for Adrian Martinez to get that huge monkey, not even monkey, like a gorilla off of his back. And so I'm happy for him. We all knew what talent he had potentially at Nebraska, just never came to fruition. So Adrian Martinez, I'm proud of you. Nebraska fans, enough. Just, figure out what's going on. He left you, and right now we all know that The Nebraska Cornhusker football program is an absolute purgatory right now. So we'll see what they can do. So for you, Adrian Martinez, I am happy. So for you, my week 4 3 cheers goes to you. Enjoy it. Soak it in. Take a bow, because here you go. It's for you. Adrian Martinez. That's right. You deserve it. So that is my sound off segment going into week 5, post week 4, and we'll see what they can do. K-State moving forward. But they definitely find themselves in the Big 12 title race now, at least a chance to get into the conference championship game with that big win on the road over Oklahoma. And that's more that can be said for Nebraska. That's just how it is. All right. So now let's move into my next segment, which is my favorite segments each and every week. I love it. Let's move into previews, picks, and the trap games. That's right. Admiral Akbar may or may not make a guest appearance today. So let's get into first some games that I'm going to put some of these teams on trap alert, coming off of big wins. They look potential letdown games right in the face, or maybe they have just bad scheduling to where maybe they come out flat this week due to big matchups they're looking ahead during next week of week 6. So I'm going to put these following teams on trap alert. So for you, the following are my, what kind of? It's a trap. That's right. It's my trap games for week 5. So let's get into it right now. Texas Tech at previously mentioned number 25, Kansas State. Kansas State, I've got you on upset alert. Because after that huge win at Oklahoma in Norman, you're looking at a potential huge letdown spot. So don't be looking past the Texas Tech. All right, they just knocked off Texas. They're going to come in to Manhattan, the little Big Apple, and be looking for a big victory. So be on trap alert, Kansas State. Next game is Michigan State travels to Maryland. Michigan State, I've got you on trap alert, even though I think Maryland probably is the better team. But Michigan State, you're reeling. You've lost 2 games in back-to-back weeks at Seattle against Washington. And last week in East Lansing at home, you got drubbed by Minnesota, who was my preseason pick to win the Big Ten West, by the way. Just give myself a little pat on that. But Michigan State, you're on trap alert because next week you host number 3, Ohio State. Big bad Ohio State comes to Spartan Stadium. So don't be looking past Maryland, or else you're not going to leave. You're going to leave with a loss this week. Next game, number 17, Texas A&M travels to previously mentioned Mississippi State, to where they'll be facing not just quarterback Roy Rogers, but also more cowbell there in Starkville. And once again, I think Mississippi State might be the better team here. But officially, I'm putting Texas A&M on trap alert. Don't be looking ahead, because next week, in week 6, you travel to number 2 Alabama to take on the Tide in Tuscaloosa. You better be trying to take care of business first against the Bulldogs. Next game, LSU travels to Auburn. I'm putting LSU on trap alert. Auburn, we know, wow, they're just not good. They're struggling, and I'll talk more about that game last week here during picks between Missouri and Auburn. What a game that was. But LSU, you're on trap alert. You travel to the Plains because next week, LSU hosts number 8 Tennessee. Maybe they might be looking past Auburn and looking ahead to Tennessee. So be on trap alert and be weary there, Coach Brian Kelly and the Tigers. Next game, in the Pac-12, Colorado travels to Arizona to take on the Wildcats in the desert. And I'm going to put Arizona on trap alert. Colorado is really struggling. They are 0-4, really have not been competitive at all this season. I'm really kind of stunned that Coach Carl Durrell wasn't let go or dismissed after their loss at UCLA over the weekend. If you missed it, Coach Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech has been dismissed. I called that one preseason, just like I called Herm Edwards. And I did call for Coach Carl Durrell to be dismissed. Time will tell. And Coach Brian Harsin there at Auburn, by the way. Anyway, but Arizona, you're on trap alert. Because next week, Arizona hosts number 13 Oregon. Yes, Colorado is bad. They're struggling, but they have got to be hungry for a victory. So Arizona, you're at home, but do not look past the Buffaloes. That's why you're on trap alert. And the last game, and I know, bear with me here, but I'm telling you, this team looks more like a 5-loss team than a 2 or 3-loss team, and I still don't really know how they defeated Utah in the opening week. I think it's just because Utah didn't have any tape on quarterback Jefferson for Florida. They just didn't. But Eastern Washington from the FCS, leaving the red turf. The Eagles are traveling to Florida to take on the Gators in the Swamp. Eastern Washington's a good squad. Florida barely escaped against South Florida a couple weeks ago. So Florida, I'm putting you on trap alert at home against the Eagles because next week Florida hosts Missouri, which to them, it is a SEC game, but a very winnable game for Florida. They need a victory in the SEC to kind of calm things down there a little bit in Gainesville. But Florida, don't be looking past the Eagles. They're coming to town to collect a big-time check and the victory as well, to take them both home with them. Just asked Texas A&M about that. Giving out $1.5 million to Appalachian State. Appalachian State says, hey, thank you for the $1.5 million, and we'll take the victory back home to Boone, North Carolina as well. So that is my what games for Trap 5 there, Emerald Akbar? It's a trap. That's right, folks. Those are my trap games for Week 5 coming up this weekend. So we'll see. So if you're on trap alert, if you're a fan of one of those games, let them know. Don't be so surprised or shocked if it does come to fruition. I'm just telling you. All right, so now let's move into my favorite segment each and every week, my previews and picks for the upcoming week. Now, if you're unfamiliar, every week this is what I do on my picks segment. I will select at random 15 games. Some of them are games that you know, big-time games, and some might be a little bit off the radar games. And within those 15, I always pick 6 spotlight games each and every week. And those 6 spotlight games are the Academy Game of the Week, featuring one Academy team, Army, Air Force, or Navy, as a salute to the men and women of the U.S. Armed Forces. I will always have a non-Power 5 matchup of the week, a big-time matchup between 2 non-Power 5 teams, whether it be from the same conference or a crossover matchup among those conferences. I will always have a FCS matchup of the week. I always like to give lots of love and respect to the FCS teams of Division I FCS. They play great football. They do. Just ask some of the teams that have been knocked off this year at the FBS Power 5 level. Northwestern falling to SIU Salukis a couple weeks ago. Also within those games, I will always then have both, whenever our black and golds are in action that week, I will always pick the Missouri and Iowa games. I always will. And then after that, the last one that I will pick, I will always have my spotlight premier game of the week. The game that I think is going to go the furthest towards standings, rankings, and the college football playoffs. So that's what I do each and every week during my preview and picks episode. And now what I'm looking to accomplish, I set a goal for myself preseason. At the end of the season, regular season that is, I want to be at 70% or better. Right now, I had a rough week last week. It was a winning record. I went 8-7, which is good for 53% on the week. Right now, coupled with my previous week's wins and losses, I'm 35-25, good for 58%. So I need to have a big win. I got to have a few weeks of 9, 10, 11 wins just to get back on pace to get to 70. And if you missed it, the second annual Touchdown Black and Gold Guest Picker Tournament has begun. I've had 2 guest pickers so far, and these are the early rounds of picking for the guest pickers. This will go into how I seed them during the actual guest picker tournament. Last week, Brett, last year's champion, was up. He went 11-4. Great showing by the champ. My brother Anthony went the week before with a score of 8-7. This week, we do have a guest picker with us. My former co-host and Missouri fan number 1. That's right, the true male Adonis. You know, the living, breathing, walking, talking Venus de Milo. Charlie is up. I've got his picks as well for this week, so we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my previews and picks for week 5. So in the first game up, huge battle in the Big Ten. Purdue travels to number 21 Minnesota. I said this during my bold predictions episode earlier this year that this would be the biggest game in the Big Ten West, and I believe the winner of this game will win the Big Ten West Division. I did pick Minnesota to win preseason, so I'm rolling with the Golden Gophers. Their rushing attack, they just absolutely body blow you, body blow, punch, jab. They absolutely just beat and batter you. I mean, they are running all over opponents. A lot of people haven't bought them as a legitimate contender, but they are legit. Purdue, I think, is just a one-trick pony. All they do is pass. They don't run. They don't want to run. That's not in Jeff Brom's DNA. So at home in the Twin Cities, I'm taking the Golden Gophers. I'm going with Minnie. And Charlie, he's also on board. He's taking Minnesota as well. Next game, a big matchup in the Big 12. Number 18, Oklahoma. How do they respond after losing last week at home to Kansas State and Adrian Martinez? They're on the road at TCU, the undefeated Horned Frogs, a team that I'm very high on. I actually picked these 2 teams to meet in the Big 12 championship game. Can Oklahoma get off the mat? Can they be inspired, come out motivated, wanting to prove that that was a fluke, to prove to themselves, their fans, their coaches? TCU is tough. They're veteran. They have a lot of starters back. I love this team. I think they're still flying way under the radar, and they shouldn't be, but maybe that's how they like it. At home, I'm taking the Horned Frogs to keep Oklahoma at bay because they're at home, and they really will run the same blueprint that Kansas State did. They will try to out-physical Oklahoma on both sides of the lines of scrimmage. That'll be the key, and I love quarterback Max Duggan. I think he's an absolute gamer. I'm taking TCU. And Charlie, he actually likes Oklahoma to bounce back, so we have our first disagreement of the week. He's taking the Sooners. Next game, big-time matchup in the Pac-12. Oregon State, after a really good showing last week at home against USC, they go on the road to number 12 Utah. That's a tough matchup, back-to-back weeks for the Beavers. Utah, I think they still have a lot to prove. A lot of people have written them off as college football playoff contenders. I have not. I picked them as one of my 4 college football participants preseason. I'm sticking with them. At home, they're going to be physical. They're going to try to beat Oregon State the same way that they'll try to beat other opponents. But I think Utah does it better at elevation. I'm taking Utah at home, even though their stud tight end is now out for the season. That's going to hurt them. They lose a huge weapon. But I think at home it's not going to make a difference. I'm still taking the Utes, the 2 Utes of Utah. Charlie, he agrees with me. He thinks Utah is just too much power, too much physicality, and coached well by Kyle Whittingham. They've got a culture and identity. Going to be too much for the Beavers. We both like Utah. Next game, big-time tilt in the SEC. Number 2, Alabama travels to Fayetteville to take on number 20 Arkansas. Arkansas coming off of just a really demoralizing loss last week. They really controlled the game for the vast majority of the game in Jerry World against Texas A&M, but ended up walking away losers. Can they get themselves up? Can they come back, bounce back? This is a tough matchup for them. I think Alabama is just a little bit more prepared. They did play Vanderbilt last week, won big. No disrespect to Vandy. They definitely are much improved under Coach Clark Lee. But I think Alabama, better rested, in a better spot mentally and physically. I'm taking the Tide on the road. Charlie, he's going with me verbatim. He likes Alabama as well. We both like the Tide over Arkansas. Next game. Now, this game could have been my premier game of the week. It was on the short list. It was this or the other game, but I went another direction. Huge game in the Big 12. Number 9, an undefeated Oklahoma State travels to number 16 Baylor, who has the non-con loss at BYU. I think the winner of this game really has the early head up to get to the Big 12 championship game. I love Oklahoma State, really love Baylor and what Coach Dave Aranda has going on there in Waco. I'm going with Chip and Joanna Gaines on this one. Too much strawberry butter. I like it. That's a true fixer-upper. Dave Aranda's done a great job. I think Baylor is just too much at home. I'm taking the Bears. Charlie, he's also taking the Bears as well. So we're both on the Baylor train. Next, a non-Power 5 matchup, but a big one within the American Athletic. SMU, the Mustangs, after tough back-to-back losses at Maryland and at home against TCU by 1 scores each. SMU travels to Orlando to take on UCF. Now, this game is still scheduled to be played, but hurricane that is wreaking havoc all over Florida. My thoughts and prayers are with all of you Floridians, all of you who have friends or families in Florida. I'll say some prayers for you when I do. So this game might be postponed, but let's just act like it is going to be played. SMU, I love Tanner Mordecai and wide receiver Rashi. I mean, these guys are a big-time dynamic duo, only maybe rivaled by Batman and Robin, or in my case, because I'm a glutton, maybe spaghetti and meatballs. UCF, I love what Gus Malzahn has going on there with the Knights in Orlando. I think if they do play this game, there'll be a lot of emotion, a lot of motivation as well to play for the hurricane victims and their fellow statesmen. So I'm taking UCF in this game to get it done. Charlie also likes UCF, so we're both taking the Knights to get it done over the Mustangs. Next game up, big one in the Pac-12. Stanford travels to number 13 Oregon, one of the toughest places to play in the nation, in Autzen Stadium in Eugene. Now, I'm a big fan of history. I am a historian with college football. Stanford has been an absolute blister and thorn in the side of Oregon in years past. You know, they've been like Bob Marley, not Bob Marley, Jacob Marley, excuse me. Got a little Bob Marley on my mind here. Now, don't take that anywhere, guys, okay? Nothing illegal is going on in this residence, okay? So, Jacob Marley, Ghosts of Christmas Past. But I think this Oregon team is different. I think they've got it on. They got their swagger back after a big-time beatdown of BYU a couple weeks ago, and then their monumental comeback last week over Washington State up in Pullman. I like what Bo Nix has got going on. He's got his swagger back. He's out there doing his thing. I'm taking the Ducks at home. Charlie, he's also going with Oregon, so we agree on that game. Next game up, another ranked game in the SEC. Number 7, Kentucky travels to number 14 Ole Miss to take on the Rebels in Oxford. I like what Kentucky's got going on. Physical. Chris Rodriguez, their stud running back. He's rejoining the team. This will be his first game of the season. But I think at home, Ole Miss is just going to be too much. I think they wear down Kentucky. I like the Rebels. And Charlie, he likes this game. He likes Kentucky to bring home the victory. So we do have a disagreement there. Now we get into my specialty game. Well, actually, this is not. This is another non-Power 5 matchup. I got to give them props. James Madison, that's right, the Dukes, who will sit there undefeated. They are at home against Texas State. I believe they're the Bobcats, I believe, of Texas State. James Madison, huge story, maybe one of the big-time stories, if not the story of this early college football season. This is their first year at the FBS Division I level. They're sitting there undefeated. Opening game, they knocked off MTSU, the Blue Raiders, who went down to Coral Gables and absolutely beat down Miami during week 4. And last week, JMU traveled to Appalachian State, who had been the darlings of college football at the non-Power 5 level, but they took care of the Mountaineers in Boone. So JMU's having a great season. Because of that, I'm going with JMU. I got the Dukes, James Madison. It's just, I don't want this story to end quite yet. Charlie, he's also got the Dukes of James Madison. Now we get into my spotlight games of week 5. First one, let's do the Academy game of the week, and it is the first matchup towards this year's winner of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy, given to the best team of the Academies. They have a round-robin playoff during the year. This is the first matchup of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy. Navy travels to Air Force, Colorado Springs, to take on the Falcons. Air Force, I think, is one of, if not the best team at the non-Power 5 level. They let me down with that road loss a couple weeks ago at Wyoming. I still don't know how that happened. But I like Air Force big at home. Charlie, he's also taken the Falcons as well. I mean, after 2 weeks, I mean, this Air Force team rushed for over 1,000 yards. They know how to run that triple option to a T. It's a thing of beauty. We both like Air Force. Next is my non-Power 5 matchup of the week, and I got to give props and love to the host. UTSA, the Roadrunners, are on the road at MTSU, the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. I'm giving them the spotlight this week because of that decisive big-time victory over Miami last week, which was the program's first ever win over a ranked opponent, and it wasn't even close. I mean, just ran rampant all over that defense of Miami. So, but there's been a pattern this year, folks. Whenever a team has pulled a huge upset, the very next week they have fallen. They have not been able to sustain a victory. Ask Marshall about that. Appalachian State needed a Hail Mary to do that. Their week after knocking off Texas A&M. Tulane 2 weeks ago knocked off Kansas State. They lost to Navy last week. So it's just hard to sustain. That being said, I like the Roadrunners and quarterback Frank Harris to go to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, take home the victory. I'm taking the Roadrunners. Charlie also likes the Roadrunners as well. We both got UTSA. Next is my FCS matchup of the week, and this one is a battle for bragging rights in the Volunteer State. Number 10, Chattanooga, via the FCS rankings. Number 10, Chattanooga, the Moccasins, travel to ETSU, East Tennessee State University. I liked what I saw, even though they got shut out, I believe, by the Fighting Illini last week. I like Chattanooga. I think they're going to be too much for ETSU. I'm going with Chattanooga, and so is Charlie. We have another agreement. Now it's the 2 games involving our beloved black and golds. Number 1, Georgia travels to Missouri. After last week's debacle, how Missouri lost that game, I don't want to say they're cursed. I mean, do I believe in such a thing? I don't. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan. So all of those years when it was the curse of this, the curse of that, it's just called bad Cub baseball, okay? And this is just bad Missouri football. I mean, they had their chances at Auburn. Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker, misses basically a extra point. And they go to overtime. They jump offside on a field goal attempt, which is missed. retry for Auburn. They kick it through, they convert, and then a fumble, a dropped ball just outside the 1 yard line, recovered by Auburn in the end zone. Victory Auburn. They get sent home happy in overtime. Yeah, I think this is just too much Georgia. I mean, Missouri, I think, will come out with a fight, but just too much Bulldogs here. I think it's going to be Georgia big. I believe they're a 28-point favorite. I don't know if they can quite cover that, but if they do, I'm not going to be surprised. I like Georgia. So does Charlie. Next, number 4, Michigan. The Big Bad Wolverines travel to Kinnick Stadium to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Once again, I'm a pupil of history, and Coach Jim Harbaugh, Coach Kaki himself, has never, ever won a game inside Kinnick Stadium as both a coach and a player. He's been shut out. The last time they came to Kinnick, I believe it was 2016, ranked number 3 and undefeated. They fell to the Hawkeyes, who were really a mediocre team. We all know that Kinnick is one of the toughest places to play, especially when you're a top 5 ranked team. History shows that. They've knocked off opponent after opponent. Michigan hasn't won, too, at Kinnick since 2005. It's been a while. And these teams always seem to really play so evenly on the field, other than the game most recently in everybody's memory, the last year's Big Ten title game, which Michigan rolled Iowa 42-3. That really is the only lopsided blowout victory that I can remember in my lifetime, and I'm 41 years old. But I think there are 2 key factors that are going to pay dividends for Michigan this week. Last week, at home, they got punched in the mouth by Maryland, their first real challenge of the year. Michigan easily is the team that steps up the most in competition from non-conference to conference play. I mean, their non-conference schedule was Charmin soft. It just was. They responded well. Maryland gave them everything they wanted and more, but they were able to hold them off. They got the victory by 7. Now, if that wouldn't have happened, I think that would have absolutely helped Iowa, because Iowa, is going to punch them in the mouth, draw them into a telephone booth, try to body blow them and get them to proceed in a rock fight. That's what's going to happen. But also, too, this game, it's the 11 o'clock kick game, which is unfortunate for Iowa, but also good for Michigan. If it's a night game, then I actually would probably have picked the home team. My mind tells me one thing, but my heart tells me something else. But I've got to go with my mind because of that, being challenged last week and a early kickoff game. I got to take Michigan to get the victory against Iowa at home. But for both of the last 2 picks, both the Missouri and Iowa game, I hope I end up being wrong, but I'm taking Michigan in this one. And Charlie, same thing. He also is taking the Wolverines as well. Now, last one for this week's episode, the Spotlight Premier Game of the Week. Big-time matchup in the ACC. ACC title implications. ACC division implications. Also, playoff implications as well. Number 10, NC State travels to number 5, Clemson. Last year's matchup, big-time victory for the Wolfpack over Clemson. I expect this to be a back-and-forth game. 2 stud quarterbacks, DJU for Clemson, Devin Leary for NC State. Last week, Clemson gave up 5 touchdown passes against Wake Forest and Sam Hartman. I think Devin Leary will have some similar success. I think this will be a lot of offensive fireworks. I think Clemson has the better defense slightly. Their offense has struggled out of the gate, but last week, I think they kind of started to find themselves. Wow. Now, I did pick Clemson as one of my 4 playoff participants. I did say that NC State would be one of the 7 teams, I believe, that had a legit chance to be in the playoff. So I've got to stick with my preseason pick, and it's at home. They do not lose conference home games, does Clemson. I got to take the Tigers in this game, but it's going to be a really, really good game to watch. I can't wait. Charlie, he's really with me. My sentiments, he shares them. He's taking the Tigers because they're at home as well. So that's it, guys. That's my episode, my Week 5 picks and preview episode. Please like, share, subscribe, click the button, comment. I always encourage any involvement by you, the college football universe, and you college black and gold fans, all of you, please. So thank you again. None of this is possible without you, your time, your attention, your support. I thank you. There's my bow to you. Next week, be looking for my Week 5 review and recap episode. That'll be out either Monday or Tuesday, so be looking for that here on the channel. So until then, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the football, and as usual, I leave you with peace, progress, prosperity, and I'll see you next week. And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold Vlog. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.